beautiful souls, welcome back and welcome to those of you who are new to my channel. I just want to say thank you again for those of you who have made the time to watch and listen in to my videos and have left such beautiful comments. Before I get started, I just really wanted to remind everyone to really just follow your heart when listening in and to only take what resonates and to let go of what doesn't. Today's thought-provoking message is: what if the year of 2020 and all that has unfolded around the world was simply a divine gift from God, the all that is? A gift to trigger the extreme fear that each and every one of us holds within and controls every decision we make, all for the sole purpose of feeling safe, financially secure, loved and accepted in this world of uncertainty that we live in today. What if this gift enabled us to clearly see our life from a different perspective and an opportunity to change the areas in our life that no longer serve us? My hope today is that this message might encourage you to consider that everything in your life that may be causing you uncertainty, discomfort and disharmony may in fact be a gift for you to unpack, to help you rediscover the best version of you that has simply been lost in a sea of fearful thoughts in order to survive. I know myself when the coronavirus reared its ugly head and it became common knowledge that it was here to stay. I felt many fears that I still held within my subconscious rise to the surface. Fears of survival, fears of the unknown, fears for my safety and the safety of my friends, family and loved ones, to name just a few. Then when people's true nature started to expose itself, with people feeling stressed, angry, frustrated and righteous, I started to realize that maybe this isn't such a bad thing that is happening. As I watched the news, I could see people releasing pent-up anger that was simply driven by the fear of their survival, their fear of uncertainty, and their fear of having no control over this situation that our entire world was facing. Sadly, because so many of us have not been taught how to control our emotions, as a result, this releasing of fear has the potential to hurt others, and as we have seen, their pain is taken to extreme levels by the taking of others' lives. Thankfully, through all of this mess each and every one of us has had to live through, we have also witnessed a revival of family connection. With every situation we arrive at, there is always a choice to be made, and that choice to make is one of either fear that has the potential to drive you to insanity, or love that can empower an individual and bring people together to unite as one. As you know from all that I have shared from my previous 5 videos, I am definitely all in for choosing love over fear. After sharing with you what happened in the weeks that followed the death of my younger sister Melody in part 1 of my Awakening to Remember series, I continue to share with you a message that has become a bit of a theme throughout each video, and that theme had everything to do with our emotions and our feelings and how the environment that we were brought up in as children and continue to surround ourselves in our lives today is very much what influences how we think, how we feel, and how we cope in our daily lives and the kind of people we choose to create relationships with. After my sister died, I came to understand just how important it really is to have our emotions in check, and how learning to become responsible for how we feel rather than blaming others outside of ourselves is a powerful tool to develop and has the potential to truly help us overcome great tragedy and traumatic experiences in our lives. This knowledge was not new for me at the time of her passing, as I myself had overcome much diversity, tragedy and trauma in my own life, and through my overcoming heartache, ill health and tragedy, I have been gifted with much insight. It is this insight that ultimately allowed me to communicate with my sister after she left the earth plane, and assisted me in moving through the grief process very quickly, allowing me to continue to have regular communication with her to a point where it feels like she has never left my side. It is with this knowledge in mind that I feel it necessary for me to begin my message today by sharing a little of my own story, so you can better understand where I want to take you in my Awakening to Remember series. I have been on a spiritual quest of sorts since 2008, after experiencing an unusual encounter with an old canine friend of mine from almost 20 years prior, called Chevy. He was a prize-winning white English Bull Terrier who lived with myself and now ex-boyfriend from when I was roughly 16 till I was about 18 and a half years old. This dog appeared at my bedside in spirit form one morning as clear as day and began talking to me telepathically. To be honest, I was dumbfounded and in disbelief at the time, as I was a total skeptic with all things spiritual and paranormal until I received his message. You see, he had come to tell me that he had forgiven me for leaving him behind with the ex-boyfriend at the time. He shared with me that he understood why I had to leave and that he was in a happy place right now and wished for me also to be in a happy place. When I received this message, I burst into tears as it brought up some very traumatic and painful memories that I really thought I had buried for good. Within minutes of receiving his message of forgiveness, he told me that I too had to forgive myself. And in that moment, I became aware that I really was holding on to something deep inside of me. I felt pain in my heart, a sense of guilt, and then a deep feeling of sadness and regret washed over my entire being. And as I felt it wash over me, I also felt it leave me, and as it did, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I was so overwhelmed at the time, I cried uncontrollably for several hours, and I remember being amazed that I was completely unaware of this burden I had been carrying around on my shoulders until that very moment. I came to understand in a very short amount of time that I needed to release this pain that I had been holding on to since a teenager, as these memories were one of the root causes to my struggles and health issues over many years. At that time, I had to escape this boyfriend in order to survive, and I would not be here to tell you the story if I had not left him when I did. Sadly, I had to leave my beloved Chevy with this very unstable, mentally and physically abusive guy who not only hurt me and threatened my life and the lives of my family, but had also physically hurt my dog. I discovered that unknowingly I was carrying the guilt of having to leave him behind with me for all those years. This incredibly powerful encounter shook me to my core and quite literally launched me onto a path of self-discovery. Many years after I escaped this very traumatic experience, I would find myself in other relationships repeating these same patterns of abuse, or I would overreact into situations that would simulate a past experience and cause much disease, not only in my relationships, but also in my body. It was like I was always prepared for danger ahead and would expect that if I did something wrong, I would have to take a beating. Of course, at the time I didn't realise I was doing this. It just became my new normal, my way of reacting and responding in any relationship I found myself in. After training as a chef from the age of 15 in the 80s, where there really wasn't such a thing as women's rights, I had learned at an early age that for a woman to survive in a man's working world, I just had to put up with a certain amount of sexual misconduct, and became accustomed to much unfair treatment at the time. After this incredibly humbling experience with my dog Chevy, I had so many unanswered questions and went searching for anyone who might be able to give me some answers. It was not long after that I found a laddie who held personal self-development classes once a week, which I joined and continued for over 2 years. Prior to all of this, I had been diagnosed many years previously with fibromyalgia and later PTSD, suffering many other debilitating conditions, and had attempted to recover through the usual means by visiting many doctors, specialists and other therapists. I found myself totally reliant on pharmaceutical medications and felt no better for it after 14 years. It caused no end of grief for my poor husband, who continues to be the love of my life and has supported me mentally, emotionally and financially for years when I would have to cut down my hours at work or quit a job due to overwhelming pain. I am so grateful for his unconditional love, his patience and downright resilience. Like any long-lasting relationship, we have had many ups and downs and have the mental and emotional battle wounds to prove it. Like most men who live in this world we live in today, he too has been programmed to suffer in silence. Much of what I have come to understand about love, compassion, forgiveness, and living my life in truth has come from the lessons I have learned together with my husband. We have both grown and evolved mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and although we continue to lead a life of different beliefs, we have managed to allow the love we have for one another to be the guiding light in our relationship. Thanks to Chevy and his message of forgiveness, it led me down a path that helped me to discover that there was a way out of pain. And although it was unconventional at the time, I soon discovered that there was a powerful connection between our mind and our body, and that when we learn how to connect, listen to, and feel what our body is trying to tell us, we can assist in our body's own natural ability to heal itself by allowing this connection to be made. As I gained a better understanding of this whole mind and body communication system, I then became aware of the fact that many of the health problems I was experiencing were brought about from the often volatile environments I had been exposed to for many years, living with abusive partners and working with abusive work colleagues in the past. With further investigation and much progress in healing of my own physical and emotional wounds, I also began to discover that not only myself, but all of us hold mental and emotional wounds and scars from early childhood, even as early as conception and birth. These painful memories are held within our subconscious mind, but felt in the body as pain, and we are not always aware of this until we begin doing the inner work to heal our wounds from our past. I have offered many an example of this through the sharing of my experiences of misunderstandings in part 2 through to part 5 of my Awakening to Remember series. With these discoveries and the drive to bring my body back into balance so I could live a somewhat normal life again, I began studying within the world of metaphysics. And over many years, I've obtained many qualifications to heal myself and others. Over time, I came to understand the importance of a spiritual journey and achieving self-mastery. and that we must all take this journey in order to bring balance into our mind, body and soul. In 2012, while practicing meditation within a crystal grid that I had laid out, I had an out-of-body experience. This was my second experience like this. My first was back in 1990, when shortly after I had been raped, and 2 weeks later lost a boyfriend after he'd been killed in a hit-and-run car accident. I had thoughts of leaving this earth plane and not returning. One evening, in my sleep, I came out of my body and floated above my body and saw Jesus standing in the corner of my room, telling me that I was going to be okay, that he was watching over me, and that I was a child of God, safe and protected. I questioned this experience while in this state and didn't want to believe it was happening to me. With that, I was taken outside in spirit form, still attached by a silver light cord to my physical body that lay in bed, and floated down the road on the street I lived on to witness a car being stolen. The next morning I heard about the event on the radio and was in complete shock, as I could not deny that this experience really happened. So when I began floating above my body in the living room during meditation in 2012, I knew what was happening and I wasn't afraid. As I hovered over my body, I began receiving messages of information from an extraterrestrial being, who I now call Mannix, who claimed to be a version of myself approximately 700 years into our future. This was my understanding at the time. He stood around 6 feet tall, and his skin was blue, resembling almost cat-like features, very similar to the blue beings we see on the movie Avatar. When we had our encounters, we had many after this first experience. He taught me how to channel, so I could see what he sees in different dimensions. He allowed me to receive glimpses of our Earth that have been hidden from plain sight, and guided me to start investigating the Disclosure Project, which at the time I knew nothing about. At that time, I had many out-of-body experiences, astral travelling in spaceships with my galactic family, and several of my trips were escorted by my Danish grandfather on my dad's side, who passed many years ago. He informed me while on one of my trips with Mannix that he was one of my guardian angels, here to support me while I remain here on the earth plane. On our first meeting, he took me to explore the Akashic Hall of Records, where I learned of the many lives I had lived here on earth that spanned many thousands of years, and explained I was a very old soul. I learned that my husband was also a very old soul, and was here to support my mission, and that he was my twin flame. At the time, I really didn't believe this information about my husband, as my linear perception was convinced that because he didn't believe in what I believed, how could he be supporting me, even though he never stopped me from pursuing my spiritual journey, but rather encouraged it. Over the coming years, I realized that I had got it all wrong, and my new understanding brought us closer together. My grandfather in Mannix showed me a row of 5 planet Earths, and how they all existed simultaneously, and how the version of Earth that we live on now was very much like the world portrayed in the movie Matrix. And my grandfather made me very aware that the 5th planet was the new Earth. I was also shown the Earth spinning, made up of puzzle pieces, and each puzzle piece was in the shape of a man, like a gingerbread man, shaped using a cookie cutter to cut your cookie dough. There was one puzzle piece missing, and it was white, and it glowed very brightly. I knew deep within my being that this glowing puzzle piece of a man was very significant and had something to do with our soul and my mission here on earth. I knew at the time that somehow I was to discover this missing piece of the puzzle, and that when I discover it, that a truth would be revealed about who we really are. At that time, even in 2012, this information was so over the top for me, and the circle of friends I had, there were less than a handful, I could not share this information with, as it was beyond crazy even for me. My poor husband and my dearest sister Melody were really the only ones I could share some of this information with, and even then they too could not comprehend the message I was attempting to bring forth. Fast forward to 2015, after my husband, myself and my son witnessed 3 glowing orange orbs of light flying through the sky. Overnight I began to again receive messages from Spirit, which I now call downloads. It was almost daily that I was receiving transmissions of information about the goings on here on earth and outside the earth plane. I have shoe boxes full of notes, messages and information from our galactic family from the stars, and at the time I really didn't know what to do with it all. I came to realize shortly after that I was not the only one going through this spiritual awakening trip of a lifetime, although it really did feel like it sometimes, especially when I felt that I could not share my truth with anyone for fear of being targeted as either a total Fruit Loop or conspiracy theorist. Around the time of my sister's death, I was also becoming aware that there was a great awakening soon to take place on this planet, but I did not know exactly when this would unfold or what it was really all about. I was starting to see extraterrestrial ships in the sky when no one else could. I was seeing ships flying out of the sun in the middle of the day. I was experiencing interdimensional shifts as I would be out on my walking meditations. A straight road I would be walking on would become wavy. The ground beneath me would turn into a lake of water. I began to see, feel and know that the roots of the trees beneath me in the park I walked through communicated with one another, and eventually they began to communicate with me. In those moments I would be overwhelmed with love in my heart as I was experiencing that oneness with everything and everyone around me. There were times where I just could not stop crying as I began to realize that all the teachers whose books I had read had spoken of this world we live in as being an illusion, and I had become witness to this in real time and finally knew it was all true. Everything was beginning to speed up, and I knew something was going on with our Mother Gaia. And then she began communicating with me and showing me ahead of time when and sometimes where the next earthquake or volcanic eruption was going to take place. I began to connect more deeply with my crystals and spirit animals, and when I interacted with my clients who were coming to me for emotional guidance and support, I would somehow pick up on their pain or their issues before they had even arrived. When we would do inner work to discover past traumatic events, I would find that their face would reveal to me the age that was the source of their problem. In some cases, I would connect to a version of them in another timeline entirely. At this time, I was unfortunately not prepared for these connections and was very much afraid to share too much, as I didn't want to freak anyone out. The knowledge, however, truly helped me to guide them on their own journey of self-discovery. Meanwhile, my sister, who was living in Denmark and Europe, was becoming very ill after having many years of success surviving a kidney transplant. Sadly, over a period of time, her kidney began to fail yet again, and with her health issues becoming more serious and being put in hospital more and more regularly, I became overwhelmed with fear of losing her, while at the same time my husband was also going through some serious health issues of his own. This whole situation created a desperation within me to want to be there for her. I just wanted to fly to Denmark and be by her side, as I hadn't seen her for almost 6 years, but due to our own financial hardship and the fact we were living in Australia, this just wasn't an option. With the emotional guilt, frustration and anger I felt due to having no control of the situation, I found myself being triggered so deeply that it led me to fall back into my old ways of this third dimensional reality and brought on all my fibromyalgia symptoms that I previously had under control for several years. My sister's health had become dire, and after many procedures, her fight for life was at an end, and totally unexpectedly, she passed away after an unsuccessful procedure to save her life. I was devastated and quite numb for the first few weeks, but her separation from me was short-lived, as she has been returning to me regularly ever since she invited me to witness her life review, which I shared with you in part 1 of this series. So now that I've brought you up to speed with a little bit about who I am and the life I have lived, I would like to share with you the journey that I have been travelling since this main event unfolded. A lot has happened over the past few years, and I have discovered that my entire life's experiences and spiritual awakening in 2012 has all been leading to a defining moment in time that is unfolding as we speak. This time I speak of is the Great Awakening, and on the 29th of November 2018, I received many downloads, or transmissions if you will, that speak about this Great Awakening and what it is all about. At the time, I sat at my computer and literally started typing the information as it came through, and then went through later and corrected the grammar so it could be easily understood. I really had no idea myself of what it was all about until after I received this message. This is what I wrote. The Great Awakening is upon us. There are many stages to the awakening process, and if you didn't already know, these stages of awakening are part of the journey we must all take in order to ascend. For those of you who are on a spiritual journey, you will have no doubt have heard of the many ascended masters, who some refer to as enlightened beings, who were once ordinary human beings who walked the earth and through spiritual transformation became masters. They were the teachers who passed down spiritual knowledge from their ancestors to those who would listen in their time. Many of these teachings are what we base much of our spiritual knowledge on today, and examples of those believed to be ascended masters are Jesus, Mother Mary, Gautama, Buddha, Sanat, Kumara, and many more. I would advise you to go and investigate yourself if guided to do so, as it is important to follow your own inner guidance to know this truth. Since the 21st of December 2012, our planet Earth, our Mother Gaia, has been experiencing her own awakening journey and transformation, and the Mayan calendar prophesies this as the end of days on Earth. Many misunderstood this message and believed that something terrible was going to happen to Earth on the date the calendar ended. It was somehow concluded that the civilization as we knew it was to come to an end, and that fear spread throughout the planet, and for those who had not yet been fully awakened could only perceive this message as a doomsday event. And this has really started the awakening process for all of humanity. Although many had been stuck in the polarity of this message ever since, choosing to believe the fear-based message that the end of the world as we know it will soon be upon us, which gave birth to the doomsday preppers who have made it their lifelong mission to share their truth. There are also many who received the codes of awakening that revealed to them the true meaning of the message from the Mayan calendar. That message was that the reason the calendar ended on this date was because it represented new beginnings here on earth. It meant the beginnings of a new era, a new age, and perhaps even a new way of recording linear time as we present it now. Since the 21st of December 2012, many thousands of human beings globally have been experiencing moments of awakening, moments of remembering, moments of knowing and learning a different version of truth about Earth, its inhabitants, and how we came to be here. For all those beings who were drawn to spirituality, including myself, 2012 was the beginning of a deep awakening process that has continued to this day. I wrote this on the 29th of November 2018, and 2 days ago my sister came to me and gave me a subtle message. That message was to get my shit together, her words, not mine, and to start sharing my messages, and without even realizing it at the time, it just happened to be the 29th of November 2020, exactly 2 years since I received the message that the Great Awakening is upon us. It never ceases to amaze me how Spirit, how Source, how the Divine has the ability to connect and work through us when it is time for information to be revealed to us. I know there will be many of you listening in who already know about this Great Awakening, but there are still so many who are not, and it was shown to me a few weeks ago that a second wave of beautiful souls have been awakened since the first wave back in January when this coronavirus took hold, and they are now in search for answers like we were 10, 15 and 20 years ago when we first began our journey of awakening. So now that you know that the Great Awakening is happening right now, what does it all mean, and where do we go from here? Well, the Great Awakening will span over many years, and I trust that you will do your own research, but I can give you a brief overview. On the 21st of December 2020, we officially move into the age of Aquarius, the era that will allow for a smoother transition into the next phase of our journey, which is our journey home. As we awaken and leave the Piscean era, where we have been entangled with beliefs that we needed to be saved due to being indoctrinated into the monotheistic religions, which have more or less programmed us to follow someone or something outside of us, like the Saviour Saint or the Guru, which has played out for many thousands of years. We have since 2012 begun our ascension through the many processes that have been gifted to us, like meditation, yoga, qigong, tai chi, hypnosis, emotional freedom technique, neuro-linguistic programming, quantum entrainment, and much more. By learning these processes and going within for answers to life's big questions, many have had access to higher consciousnesses and gained an understanding that we are all connected to this one source of higher consciousness. This knowing has allowed many to grow spiritually to an even higher level of being and existing through the connection of higher dimensions. As one moves into these higher dimensions and awakens to remember the hidden knowledge from our ancestors in the stars, one then becomes aware that they no longer need to be saved, and as a result will begin the journey of healing the physical, mental, and emotional body, which will allow them to leave the victimhood mentality of service to self and eventually move into the role of service to others. It is only when we journey within that we can discover the true causes of our suffering, and in the process we learn to let go of what is holding us back. Once we reach a point of self-discovery, of knowing thyself, we uncover the true meaning of why we are here. The journey home is the journey of descending our light body back into the physical body, and is the process of soul integration. This is the reason why we have all chosen to be here at this most magnificent time of awakening on our planet Earth. We essentially are becoming our own saviour, our own guru, if you will, and those who have already begun this process of ascending and descending and are now integrating with their soul have awakened to remember their missions that they agreed to fulfill here on Earth when the great shift occurs. That mission is to guide and support our soul brothers and sisters, our soul families, across the rainbow bridge of ascension and descension, which will deliver you safely from this third dimensional timeline through the fourth and on to the fifth dimension and beyond. This is where you will discover that heaven is really a place here on Earth, a version of Earth that has left fear at the back door, where ego cannot exist, where only love and unity exist, where we are all here to serve one another for the greatest good of all. This is the era that will lead us into the golden age. This is a message I have been given to share with you, but was essentially a message for myself as well, to help me understand my own mission and why I have been guided to create the Archangels Network, your escape pod to heaven on earth, which I have been in the process of unpacking since 2010. In my next video, I will be sharing with you the divine plan that was revealed to me in the days that followed my sister's life review and witnessing of the agreements I made with my extended soul family. I would also like to share with you what the Archangels Network is really all about and what I hope to achieve in support of my mission here on Earth at this time. I wish to thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you back here very soon for part 7 of my Awakening to Remember What If series. With love, Vibeke.